So let's welcome our first speaker. Pete, over to you.
Great. So let's welcome our first guest, whose 14-year-old startup seems to be on steroids, crushing the competition, ready to take on the big global empires of travel and expanding to Asia. Let's say hello to Frederic Lalonde, CEO and founder of Hopper.
Hey, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Fred.
Lift your eyes for a minute to see it just ain't free. Lift your eyes for a minute to see it just ain't free.
All right, welcome, Frederick, to your first WiT in Singapore. We're sorry you can't be here with us, but for the audiences in Asia, I just want to set some backstory. So Hopper started in 2007, but you didn't launch until 2015. And your USP was really telling people when to buy flights by predicting prices based on crunching masses and masses of data. And you launched app only. So this was a big deal in the US, not so in Asia where, we have this land of mobile and super apps, right? So as you set your sights on expanding to Asia, Frederick, what lessons will you take from players in Asia, such as Pinduoduo, Line, Kakao, Grab? What are the lessons that you're looking to from Asia?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yes, absolutely. So we at Hopper, since we launched in 2015, we've been focused on a mobile-only world. And when we came out and made our first booking, I think mobile travel bookings, so app-based in the US, were maybe 10 to 12%. Obviously, China would have been 80. India was seeing the Android surge and all that kind of stuff. So we have been pursuing this idea that everything will be mobile at some point in time. And obviously, Europe and the West lag on this. One of the things that I'm particularly interested in now is the rise of the super app. So at Hopper, you mentioned this, we started doing price predictions. We launched 20 years late, you could say. Travelocity sold the first air ticket in 1994. But weirdly, nobody had solved the problem of when should I book this ticket? And very quickly, we got tens of millions of downloads. Today, we have 70 million downloads, very close to, and we've never really spent any money on Google. We don't really buy AdWords. And for a Western company, that's super weird. We are easily the largest advertiser for travel on Snapchat. We do a lot of TikTok, actually. It's almost a third of our annual budget. So we are pursuing something that in Asia is like just Tuesday. We think there's a room for a travel super app where we'll see high frequency. In North America, this is revolutionary. There's really no player doing this. And the other part that I am obsessed with right now is basically social commerce. So you mentioned Pinduoduo. I'm probably not saying that right, but this is something that the West has just woken up to, and we think that especially in our demographic, which is very millennial, very Gen Z, there's a huge opportunity to replicate some of the learnings from those types of apps.
So you mentioned that your ambition is to be a global travel super app, and you've also referenced the fact that you're not shy about taking on Booking.com or Expedia. So who do you see as your competitors? Is it those large global OTAs, or is it the larger platforms that are starting to expand across and become super apps?
That's a good question. We compete against anybody who sells travel. At the end of the day, one of the main things that has changed with the rise of mobile is that on the web, the average customer looks at 30 to 35 websites before they book something. On a mobile device, switching between 34 apps that does the same thing is an actual mental illness. Nobody would ever do that. So there's a current arms race right now to become the launch point for intent. And Google's not going to win that on mobile. I mean, the Android platform is huge, but it's not going to start in search. So we're very interested in that. And so in that sense, Yes, absolutely. Booking.com has a formidable global presence. Expedia has a bunch of brands. There's some cleanup to do there probably, but they're huge. And then we're very interested in the possible new entrants. So Amazon is, suspiciously absent from the category in almost any way you can think of. Google is gradually creaking in. So we're very interested in those horizontal players. And at the same time, we're starting to bump into companies like Grab, that are starting to do travel. And so we just view that we compete against any place where our customer can purchase travel, and we make sure that we have an offering that's good.
Yeah, actually, Fred, I'm really curious. Do you think the US will ever have a super app?
I think the answer is generational. So one of the particularities of what we've done, because we've never really had a website, is that we run a very, very high concentration of millennial and Gen Z in our demographic. We probably have a higher concentration of those younger users than even Airbnb has out here. And so, for example, when COVID hit, our market share surged because the last people getting on an airplane, if you go back to April and May of last year, were under 25, and almost everybody in that demographic uses Hopper. The kayak and Expedia are the things that your dad uses, and we book through Hopper is kind of the running joke. And so if you slice up how those people behave, and I'm tempted to call them kids, I'm certainly not, I'm certainly older than that. They use Robinhood, they're Hopper first for travel. So I think that all we have to do is wait a decade. And this is simply because, technology was adopted earlier in the West. We were buying things on laptops before phones were really invented in the US. So yes, I think that's going to happen. It may actually be more than one, and there may be some Asian players that expand out here. And we certainly intend to carve out a place for that.
Right, and it's interesting you mentioned an Asian player, because after this we have the chairman of Trip.com Group, James Liang, speaking, right? And Trip.com Group has basically declared its goal to be the top global OTA by 2025. But that was declared in 2019, though. What do you think you do better than Trip?
Oh, that's a good question. It's actually an honor to be compared.
I wasn't comparing. I was asking you what you did better than
Hopper
Trip.
Okay, well, what we do differently than anybody else is our financial products. This is actually what has let us grow. So we actually doubled during COVID, and so our revenues went up 106% year over year, and that wasn't off of having 106% more customers. Like everybody else, we were impacted. What we do that brings people into Hopper are all of these risk-based products that we've labeled financial products. So we allow customers, for example, to freeze prices. You can hold the price of an airfare or a hotel room between a few hours to up to a month. And if the price goes down, you pay the lower. And if it goes up, we pay the difference in full to the airline or to the hotel. We make non-changeable tickets changeable. One of our most popular products right now is disruption protection. So in effect, Hopper, using the same data we use to create the forecasting, we've created all of these risk pools where everybody kind of comes in, pays a few dollars, usually it's between $5 and $50, in order to be able to be protected against adverse selection. And we actually offer this as a cloud product. So there's a thing called Hopper Cloud that you can go to, cloud.hopper.com, and we have a number of customers that do this. This is really what sets us apart.
All right, so Frederick, I think Pete has a lot of questions regarding your fintech. But before we do that, let's go to an audience poll, and let's get the virtual audience online as well to be voting for this. Who has the best chance of becoming the global #1 travel super app? And I've put in a variety of names: Hopper, Trip.com, Traveloka, or is it going to be a non-travel player? So let's see what the answer is later on. So Pete, over to you.
So I think, as you mentioned, Fred, I think one of the most interesting moves by Hopper in 2020 was that really big shift into financial services. And perhaps here's one reason why. So Suhoon, let's share a chart. So as we pull this chart up, we see financial services way up at the top and travel way down below. And Hopper has now raised close to $600 million and valued at around $3.4 billion. Was this a motivation of why Hopper went into financial services?
That chart is so funny because it embodies our journey. So, we were in late 2018, 2019, we were actually the largest single app in North America in terms of monthly downloads. The brand, if you went to the street in New York or San Francisco, most people you'd stop under 40 would know what it was. And we were making no money. We were literally the worst business that you could ever imagine. And it wasn't, by anybody's fault. It's because we were 99.7% air revenue. And in the US, the way that the structure works, the airlines just can't pay out for that kind of thing. So part of it was us figuring out our survival. If we had made even a little bit of money, we probably wouldn't have innovated so hard. So it was literally one of those things where creativity loves constraint, I think is the saying. We didn't do it deliberately to be on the top of that chart you just shown. And actually, we started doing these things before fintech was cool. I would love to tell you we saw the future. We had no idea. Fundamentally, the thinking was this. We were able to predict the future with accuracy. So when to buy your flight, we'd tell you to wait for weeks and weeks. And we'd say, in 8 months, you'll get your lowest price. If you waited, you would actually save money 95% of the time. But 5% of the time, we'd get it wrong, which is really weird if you think of it. Why were we throwing 5% of our customers under the bus? And so the foundational idea was very simple. It's like, well, what if everybody pitches in $5 and when we get it wrong for Pete, we just pay up the difference? We started from this very simple notion of risk pool and sort of accidentally stumbled our way into this really innovative process where we are letting customers buy protection against risk.
So in a way, you were actually acting like a bank, like a hedge fund, right? And you were basically, and now you say 70 to 75% of your revenues now come from your financial products. And so you were acting like a financial risk in a protection product, like a hedge fund. So could you say like what kind of losses did you see, or what percentage, of the risk were you taking on? How did you mitigate the risk?
Right. So we take all of the risk on our P&L, on our balance sheet. And we started this way before the pandemic. One big difference between us and a regulated fintech is none of these products are insurance in the sense that they need to be registered or regulated. These are just protection products. Like a price freeze is just us to making a commitment to pay the difference if the price goes up. So they're much easier to build than somebody rebuilding, a bank, for example. So it's like some of the new banks. We took all the risk on our P&L initially because, frankly, we had nothing to lose. As I mentioned, we had no big revenue stream coming in the future, and things were going great. And then there was this, small problem of a global pandemic. Our algorithms that calculate how much we should price risk, the worst case scenario they had was a hurricane on the eastern seaboard of the United States. And I remember in 2020, sitting in our office in Montreal, where I am now, looking at the planes getting grounded in Europe. It was coming as a cloud from the east. Everything was shut down. And I remember thinking, it's Monday, by Friday, we'll be out of business. Like, we'll be gone. We had more risk on our P&L than we had cash in the bank back then. It turned out not to work out that way for a number of reasons. Future travel credits. I mean, this was a nightmare for everybody who would sell travel. It would have been like everything Amazon selling for 3 months being returned on the same day. The warehouses would collapse. That's what happened to anybody who was selling travel. So I'm not going to pretend that was easy, but we came out of this with the most robust set of data you could ever ask for. The pandemic crashes everything. Demand starts a little bit. It was $84 to fly from New York to Los Angeles. They kept going up. Then wave 2 hit. Then things got really better. And then we hit the Delta. So the only good thing about the pandemic is we have trained our models with a data set that would have taken us decades if we would have been able to accumulate it at all. Okay. And so that's one of the reasons why we've raised all the money you were alluding to, is we've become a much safer investment because we've been through so much turmoil.
All right.
Yeah, so, and you say you had nothing to lose except for your investors' money, right?
Yes, and we'd raised a few $100 million, which seems small compared to where things are now. We were trying really hard not to lose everybody's money, to make it clear.
So Suhoon, let's shift a little bit to Asia. So in Asia, there's OTAs such as Traveloka, who have long innovated in fintech, and Vietnam's biggest online travel player, VN Travel, was born out of a fintech play. So were those lessons that you took from Asia as well in terms of executing fintech within travel? Did you look at Asia as a model?
Absolutely. So we started with the very simple price protection products. Some of them have been done in Europe pretty well, actually. Where I'm fascinated right now is the wallet model, and like, people that have not lived or worked in Asia don't even necessarily understand what this is. But a lot of the companies, I'm going to use Grab as an example because they're actually a sister company. We share an investor now. There was just no credit cards when they started, and so they figured out both sides of the wallet. Basically depositing and paying, and through this, again, innovation through necessity, they did all sorts of things. It's cheaper to operate. They built a better rewards program. The fraud rates are basically zero because they're on both sides. And so there's a number of companies that were built out of this, and a lot of them have, inched their way into offering all sorts of financial services because they're part of that transaction. So we find that all these markets that had companies who met extraordinarily constraints with innovation are huge inspirations. And it's turned out a lot of the things now are coming from the East. And, I was at the SCIF conference a couple of weeks ago, and I actually did a hand raise on how many people in the room knew what Pinduoduo was. Not was installed on their phone, but knew what it was. I got 0 hands in a room of 200 people.
Well,
I suspect you would get a different answer at the
exactly.
focus.
I think if we ask the audience here who has heard of Pinduoduo, come on, all the hands would go up here. So, so let's go back to the poll results. Who has the best chance of becoming the #1 global travel super app? So our audience says 43.7% says Trip.com, and non-travel player 40.8%, Hopper 11.3%. So that's not bad, Frederick, for a newcomer who haven't really come into Asia yet. So,
I'll take it.
All right. So, I'm curious too. You are also licensing your financial products and selling to the industry. So why are you giving away your crown jewels?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we thought about that. So if you think of how the travel category works, OTAs on what is predicted to be about a $2 trillion market fully recovered. This is a Bain number. OTAs around the world maybe do 400 billion, right? So this is Booking, us, Trip, Expedia, everybody who's selling travel. And you could say that's a large TAM, but it's still smaller than Shopify's or Alibaba's, which is all commerce. And so there's easily $1 billion to $1.5 billion of travel that is sold directly to the supplier. Still offline, corporate travel. So when you look at the opportunity to make a difference for a customer, why can't you freeze a price on an airline site? Why can't you freeze a hotel room if you want to book direct? There's some people that want to do that. So we just looked at that opportunity, and even not so much from a revenue perspective, but from a customer perspective. And at Hopper, we run Amazonian customer obsession. We always try to do what's right for the customer. And, being able to freeze the hotel room while you make up your mind is just a better way to buy. And so we just jumped into that saying, let's just get as many customers as possible. And one example is our anchor customer in the US was Capital One, which is a major bank. The portal, which we now power, where we offer some of this fintech, is actually a huge success, and it's been out for 4 weeks. We have currently with Hopper Cloud deals signed with companies on every continent except Antarctica. So just to give you an idea of the speed at which this has been adopted. So I would contend the crown jewels of Hopper is actually the Hopper experience. The fintech is just a way to innovate in travel, and we want to make this accessible to as many people as possible.
Okay, Pete,
so
I think
we're seeing companies,
We have 2 minutes, so I think we just have to wrap up to the rapid fire. Pete. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna shift over to rapid fire, and I want to start here with so essentially rapid fire. We just want whatever comes into your mind first. So you've just announced a partnership with Make My Trip. One lesson you've learned from them.
The Android cheap phones, when they hit the market, was a year before we launched Hopper. That's what made us go on mobile. Is when it's what made us make the right decision. I was fortunate enough to see that.
So you worked with Expedia before joining before finding Hopper. What did you have to unlearn?
Interestingly, Hopper was initially formed because we thought Expedia wasn't innovating enough. So it's not that we unlearned something, is we felt that in the decade that had, Expedia had been dominant, there was just not a lot of new stuff coming out. And so we started Hopper with the idea of just pursuing what Expedia should have done. So that was actually, and this is even a decade ago because we've been around for a while. And, Expedia hasn't changed that much, you could argue. So it was literally the catalyst to fuel new innovation in the category.
The travel brand in Asia you respect the most?
Trip.com, hands down.
Okay, favorite place.
Say hi to James for me.
Favorite place in Asia to visit when you can?
I really miss Tokyo right now. And I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I told her that is the birthplace of Hello Kitty, and she's just begging me to go now. So I think that's the next one on the list as soon as it opens up.
All right, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Frederick. We have a WiT Japan coming up, so we'll invite you to Tokyo. Thank you so much, Frederick and Pete. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great conference.
Thanks,
Thank you.
All right.